Hey everyone, just checking in for midweek check-in. I think I'm going to start trying to make a weekly podcast talking about the biggest combat sports stories of the week and creating a space to talk about how my predictions from the previous weekend went and kind of review what's coming up next. And this is a great week to start because we had so many big stories over the weekend. Every single fight on the main card of UFC 299 could have main evented a UFC fight night and should have main evented a lot of UFC fight nights instead of what we're getting coming up. But let's just dive into it. Sean O'Malley 50-45s, arguably 50-44s. Marlon Vera just kind of dominating him for the entirety of the fight. In my prediction, I predicted a 5th round knockout for Sean O'Malley. And while that prediction was fairly close, it was ultimately a decision by O'Malley, because Marlon Chito Vera is just the toughest guy in all of combat sports, in my opinion. I do not know what you can do to actually finish that guy. But anyway, Sean O'Malley calls out Ilia Topuria for a super fight at featherweight, and a lot of people aren't really happy with that. They want to see him fight Merab, which I'm totally fine with. I think that I'm fine with either one, but I do think that the Ilia fight would be even bigger if both Sean and Ilia defend their titles. And even though Merab is a serious wrestling threat, I do think that Sean O'Malley just has a good style to kind of find shots and find Merab's chin before he gets a takedown. And I think that Ilia has a really good chance of beating Brian Ortega if that's his next title defense. So even though the UFC's not really pushing for this fight right now, or at least doesn't seem like they're pushing for it, I do think that this fight still has a decently high chance of happening because I think that both of these guys are going to be able to successfully defend their titles in their next title defenses. One narrative coming out of the fight is that body shot that Marlon Vera landed on Sean O'Malley in the 5th round. O'Malley was kind of just like decided to throw down with Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera lands a left hook to Sean O'Malley's liver, and then about 10 seconds later, after the fight has already been called, Sean O'Malley sits down and the commentary notes about how brutal of a shot that was, and if Marlon Vera had landed that shot earlier in the fight, this would have been completely different. If he landed it even 2 minutes earlier, he might have been able to win. That narrative is all bullshit. Sean O'Malley admitted that he wanted to just throw down with Marlon Vera in the last 10 seconds of the fight, and that's why he was in the pocket with Vera, which allowed him to land the body shot. The reason Vera wasn't landing that body shot throughout the entirety of the fight, except for those last 10 seconds, is because Sean O'Malley was not being stupid and sitting in the pocket with Vera. He would throw his punches and then leave. Sean O'Malley had a massive footwork advantage in this fight, and that lack of footwork caused it to be really hard for Marlon Vera to land clean shots on O'Malley. So if O'Malley didn't want to just throw caution to the wind in those last 10 seconds, then he would never have gotten hit with that punch, and he only got hit with that punch because there was 10 seconds left. So anyone that's saying, Marlon Vera could finish Sean O'Malley, he just needed to do what he did in the last 10 seconds. No, that's not how that punch landed at all. But anyway, Sean O'Malley versus Merab is a great fight. That would be sweet in the Sphere. I don't know if it needs to headline a pay-per-view or anything, but yeah, Sean O'Malley and Merab is a great fight and like real pinnacle of the sport, and just classic striker versus grappler matchup that is a persistent trope throughout this sport until the end of time. I already talked about Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis in a video that I made on the fight. It was a really fun fight to watch. It did not need to be as close as it was. Dustin Poirier just decided to pull guillotines, and that's literally what lost him the first round, because he just pulled guillotine and then BSD got his back. Dustin, one thing to note about that fight is I do think Dustin Poirier's grappling increased a lot. His grappling skill improved a lot, and he was training with Gamrot because Gamrot also had a fight on this card. And I think that we saw noticeable improvements from Poirier because, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've never really seen Poirier just have such ease in getting out of potentially fight-ending positions as he did in this fight. Saint Denis had his back multiple times. He had him flattened out with both hooks in. That's like the death sentence of a position right there. And Poirier really didn't take any ground and pound, and he didn't even really look like he was using that much energy to get out of these positions. His grappling was really good and his striking was on point. Yeah, like I said in the video that I made on it, Dustin Poirier is a living legend right now, and his fighting style is just awesome. Like, he is a supremely entertaining fighter to watch. Another entertaining fighter to watch is Jack Della Maddalena, and his fight against Gilbert Burns was sick. That was a super fun fight. All of the fights on the main card were fun, with MVP versus Holland just being weird but still really entertaining. This was the only fight on the main card that I didn't predict correctly. I know I didn't release predictions for this, but just my personal predictions. I thought Gilbert Burns was going to just be able to do what he did to Wonderboy, but to Jack Della Maddalena. And Jack did a great job of defending takedowns in round 1. He then, I thought, did lose round 2. I didn't look it up on the judges' scorecards to see who officially lost round 2, but I thought Gilbert did win that round. And then I also thought Gilbert was on his way to winning round 3. Jack wasn't really getting tired or anything like that with all the grappling that was being done, but Gilbert was having success just being a dog and chasing takedowns relentlessly until he was able to get it. But Jack proved that he had stellar anti-wrestling, like his wrestling to get up was stellar, and his fight-ending instincts is always there. So he basically wriggles out of Gilbert Burns' hold on him, is able to get up to his feet. Gilbert Burns pops up immediately, level changes for a takedown, and level changes right onto Jack Della Maddalen's knee. And that knee rocked Gilbert bad. Gilbert stumbles across the cage. Jack puts him down, and then he finishes the fight with ground and pound. So great performance from Jack. You know, he's a really good striker, and I think the one area he suffers is like his power. Like, he has finishes, but he doesn't really have that one punch knockout power that you usually expect to see in someone who's like a really predominant striker and that's their main game. But because of the fact that he has such good anti-grappling, his technique is so good and so pretty to watch, and he's able to mix in good ground and pound, good knees to finish his opponents, and can literally just knock you out with like a jab and a right hand. Like, he can finish guys with volume rather than just single shot power strikes. But he called out Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is a sick fight. And as good as Shavkat is, he got hit a lot in the Jeff Neal fight, and he did a surprisingly small amount of striking versus Wonderboy. So first impression, I'm leaning towards JDM beating him, simply because he got hit a lot by Jeff Neal and he was very gun shy in striking with Wonderboy. And would Jack be gun shy in striking with Wonderboy? I don't think so. I think Jack would be more than happy to put his striking to the test against Wonderboy. Granted, Shavkat has a way higher success rate in beating Wonderboy if he grapples Wonderboy than if he had striked with him. So maybe that was just him taking the path of least resistance. But then again, why wouldn't he take the path of least resistance against Jeff Neal unless that fight made him really smarten up? So right now, I'm picking JDM to beat Shavkat. I don't know what the odds are. I don't really care. That's just my initial gut reaction from the call out, and that fight's probably not even going to happen for at least a few months if it does happen at all. But that's a sick fight. I usually don't like prospect versus prospect fights because in divisions where it's kind of stale and dusty, I want the prospects to fight the older guys so we get a constant churning of the division. But this fight is just so sweet, and welterweight is kind of clogged up at the top anyway, so we have some title shots lined up at welterweight anyway, so I really don't mind that fight at all, and I think that's one of the more sweet prospect versus prospect fights the UFC could put on. Speaking of prospects, Michael Venom Page had his debut against Kevin Holland. I thought he won every single round. I guess apparently a lot of people thought Kevin Holland won round 2, but in my opinion, if you get dropped in a round, I don't think that like landing a single elbow while on top of your opponent wins you the round over being dropped. So I picked Michael Venom Page to win just because I thought he would be a generally better striker than Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's really good at striking, but he doesn't really have a game plan. He really just goes with the flow. I mean, his last knockout against Santiago Ponzinibbio kind of is the perfect example of that. Just decides to throw a long left hook when Ponzinibbio's retracting from a kick, and he catches him clean and gets the KO. He just has a lot of like weird fluky knockouts like that. Yeah, so basically Kevin Holland doesn't really enter into fights with a game plan. Again, he's just had some fluky wins. Like, yeah, basically you just go down and look at all of his wins that he's had. He knocked out Jacare Souza off of his back with punches. This Kyle Dawkins no contest was messed up, but just knocked out Alex Oliveira with a crazy right hook. Darce chokes Tim Means, Darce chokes Michael Chiesa, left hook Santiago Ponzinibbio. Basically, he's just catching all of these guys. He's not really creating situations where he can, set up his strikes. He kind of just plays it by ear. And he really has just become the Donald Cerrone of the next generation, where he just enters these fights. He's not even too concerned whether he wins or loses. And he just goes in there and kind of fights to whatever he can do. Yeah, so basically, I wouldn't pick Kevin Holland to beat anyone unless I feel like he could beat them in striking and him not really trying. Like, if Kevin Holland's A game where he's just kind of cruising, maybe he goes in for a takedown every now and then, or he's just like spamming weird kicks and kind of like wingy punches. If I think that A game can beat someone, then I'm going to pick Kevin Holland. But if I'm just expecting Kevin Holland to suddenly put together a game plan and actually work hard to beat a difficult opponent for him, I'm not going to pick Kevin Holland. So just take that as advice in the future for Kevin Holland fights. But yeah, Michael Venom Page, he looked really good. He was super entertaining. I love how cocky he is. It makes me want to watch him because if he wins, then that just proves his cockiness. And if he loses, then we get to see a cocky guy get humbled. So I love that. I actually like his personality, but I do find it hilarious how full of himself he is. His fighting style was surprisingly effective. I saw a comment that said Michael Venom Page's fighting style is what KSI's wishes his was. And that's just funny because I saw I watched like a minute of the KSI versus Tommy Fury boxing match, and you just have KSI like standing completely bladed to Tommy Fury, hands down, and then he's basically just doing jumping jacks in front of him. And I shut that off. I couldn't watch it anymore, but that is kind of reminiscent of what MVP does. Yeah, so he's a good striker. His ability to get up from underneath Kevin Holland was impressive, and also his ability to just break from the clinch was impressive. He paced himself really well. Obviously, it was only a 3-round fight, but still, he didn't really get tired. Again, I thought MVP won every single round. He knocked Kevin Holland down in rounds 2 and 3. Yeah, I think it's actually really stupid that Holland won round 2. That fight was a domination from Michael Venom Page, to the point where Kevin Holland was just getting so frustrated he was dancing around. And yeah, that's another reason why you don't pick Kevin Holland. He doesn't take these fights seriously. He doesn't try to win. He's just like, I take these fights to have a good time, and you're taking that away from me, so I'm going to dance around with you and make fun of you. If he really wanted to take the fight seriously, he'd be going for takedowns, trying to knock out Michael Venom Page, but whatever. Let's take a quick look at the rankings at welterweight. Did MVP get added? Yeah, Michael Page. So he's ranked number 13. Holland was 13 at the time. Michael Page, who would I like to see him fight against? Honestly, all of these names I'd love. Not Jack, because I want Jack to fight up. Colby Covington, I'd be fine with that. Shavkat, I think Shavkat would probably destroy him on the ground, so maybe not Shavkat. Jack, Gilbert Burns would be a really tough test for Michael Page, but I think he might be able to knock out Gilbert Burns. Ian Gary would be a really fun fight. These guys both have similar body types. Sean Brady, no. He would just take Michael Page down and control him on the ground. Stephen Thompson, it'd be an interesting fight, but Michael Page did an interview on Ariel Helwani's show, and he basically said, it'd be two karate point fighters, and it wouldn't be that entertaining, which I kind of agree with. Thompson versus Kevin Holland was kind of catching magic in a bottle. It was a rare occurrence. But I think Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, or Neil Magny would all be great picks for Michael Page. So Neal, Luque, Magny, Burns, Ian Gary, Colby Covington. So many good options. Maybe even Kamaru Usman. You never know. That'd be interesting. So yeah, a lot of good options for MVP. And if he gets a big win over Gilbert Burns or Colby Covington, he could very well fight for the title in his next fight. Keep an eye on him. He's a super fun personality. Great addition to the UFC's welterweight division. Okay, so we had Petr Yan versus Song Yadong also taking place on this card. This, in my opinion, was fight of the night just because we had so much diversity in terms of the striking, the grappling. It was so dynamic. Both guys were landing punches. Both guys were landing takedowns. It was just a sick fight. Petr Yan kind of just used his experience. I thought he did have the better techniques. When Song was getting tired, he just started winging out big left hook, right hook combinations. And Yan just stuck behind his jab. He was also able to land just punches on the inside of Song's punches. You can see Song has good punching form when he's not tired. And then second round, he started getting more tired. Third round, he was really tired, and Petr was just able to land clean punches on the inside of Song's strikes. Again, to borrow from the Weasel, straight punches always beat looping punches, and Song was throwing a lot of looping punches. I thought that Piotr's wrestling was just really good. He was able to mix it in at a really, he was able to mix in his wrestling at perfect times to use his wrestling to basically score points and deal damage. He was dealing damage to Song, elbowing him through his guard. So great veteran performance from Petr Yan. And Song, he's winning fights. He's winning fights against ranked contenders at bantamweight, but I haven't really seen too many improvements from him. Let's actually take a look at his record. So, of course, he's still only 26, so we need to grade him on a bit of a curve, but he lost to Kyler Phillips again after being rocked badly in the first round, losing the second round, and then he started coming on in the third round. But he beat Casey Kenny. He knocked out Julio Arce with a head kick in round 2, and then he knocked out Marlon Moraes. Looked really good against Marlon Moraes, but that was on Marlon's huge losing streak, so have to look at this with a grain of salt. Then he fights Corey Sandhagen. This was just way too soon for him, and Corey Sandhagen just did a great job of slowly beating him down. And this Corey Sandhagen loss is actually kind of reminiscent of his Petr Yan loss, where he started off great, but then he just started slowing down. Corey Sandhagen was also able to utilize wrestling to just kind of disrupt Song's momentum. And yeah, as Song slowed down, Corey's just able to kind of pick up the pace. And then Petr Yan just enacted a similar game plan. Then Song fights Ricky Simone, beats him. Chris Gutierrez beats him, and then loses to Yan. So, he's 26, and he's beating guys at the bottom of the rankings, and he's losing to guys at the top of the rankings. So he's not in a horrible position, but he definitely does need improvements, right? He needs his game is great. He's well-rounded. He's powerful. He's fast. But he doesn't have an aspect of his game that he can lean on when times get tough, right? He's well-rounded. He's fast, but his speed goes away. He's powerful, but his power goes away as he gets tired. He can wrestle, but his wrestling goes away when he gets tired. And so when he's up against these veteran guys that have their A games, they have these set strategies in place that they can rely on, he kind of just dissolves in the face of that. So maybe he can really work on his wrestling, and so he can take his opponents down and win rounds that way, start putting damage on them. His striking definitely needs work. His striking technique just dissipates when he gets tired. So Song Yadong, great fighter. He's only 26, have to keep reminding myself that, but it is bantamweight where people have their primes earlier rather than later, and I still need to see improvement. And it's not even that, like, he can't improve. My main issue is that we haven't seen that much improvement from him. I would say he's been the same since the Marlon Moraes fight, which I guess is only 2 years ago, but still, you should be able to see some tangible improvements in 2 years. Petr Yan, I think, has actually shown improvements. I think his wrestling has gotten a lot better. He was able to take Song down for large parts of the fight, controlling him and winning rounds. That's a great improvement that's noticeable and has real implications for the top of the division as he fights onwards. Let's take a look at the bantamweight rankings right now. Yeah, so Song Yadong is ranked number 7. So he is in this limbo where he's just going to be bouncing between the bottom of the division and probably beating them and the top of the division and losing to them. But as the division undergoes turnover, like as Aljo leaves, Cejudo leaves, we'll see some changes. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Song lands. Petr Yan is still ranked number 4. Above him is Merab, who he lost to, Sandhagen, who he beat, and Aljo, who's probably going to leave the division. So in my opinion, Yan probably needs one more fight before he fights for the belt, especially since it's so clogged up with Merab and Corey Sandhagen right now. Maybe he fights Marlon Vera. That's been a fight that I've wanted to see for a long time. Marlon Vera versus Yan in a main event. That would be a sick fight. Or they just give him a tune-up fight with someone at the bottom of the division like Rob Font. That would also be a sweet fight. Dominic Cruz, maybe Mario Batista. I don't think you can really miss with Yan. I just don't want to see him sitting out for a long time waiting for a title shot off of just beating Song Yadong. As far as Song goes, again, just have him fight someone lower in the rankings. Umar would be sweet. Rob Font would be great. Rob Font versus Song Yadong was a fight that was made. Song just had to pull out due to injury, but that would be a great fight. They should probably just remake that fight. Yeah, can't really miss with either of those guys. And I do think Yan is one win away from a title shot. That was all of the fights on the main card. Any good prelims? I still need to watch a few of these. Kyler Phillips looked really good against Pedro Munoz. I kind of mentioned this in my pre-fight breakdown of Vera versus O'Malley, but Pedro Munoz just lost to Marlon Vera, and I thought he lost 29-28. I thought he won the second round kind of convincingly. And Kyler Phillips, I thought, beat him up better than what Marlon Vera did. So Kyler Phillips is someone I've had my eye on for a while. He is a super good fighter, and it seemed like he's been working on his cardio because he used to have the issue of having great cardio in round 1 and then just falling off a cliff in rounds 2 and 3. So he looked good. Mateus Gamrot, I was not watching this fight closely. I need to go back and rewatch it, but, some really fun scrambling against RDA. Need to go back and watch that, but this was not an unexpected outcome. Didn't watch this fight. Watched the finish of Blades versus Almeida. Really, my only commentary on this is that I think it's hilarious where there's just a position in MMA where you can just knock out your opponent because they hang their head in the perfect place for you to elbow and hammer fist them for too long. Good finish by Michelle Pereira over Mikhail Oksejek. Rebellis de Spain is just a physical freak, so that's always going to be a fun watch. And Joanne Wood retired. Great job by her. Going back to Friday, we had Francis Ngannou losing to Anthony Joshua in boxing. I made a quick little video on that, kind of just talking about how Ngannou really didn't have he really didn't display good fundamentals in that boxing match. And I don't think this should really surprise anyone. I just do think it's funny how kind of just let Tyson gas out against him, and people in MMA were just so high on him that they actually thought he could beat Anthony Joshua. Yeah, but I'm not, no hate for Francis Ngannou or anything, but he did just get knocked out cold, so I think he should retire. So I was listening to the MMA Hour today, and Ariel Helwani is like, I think the next step for Francis Ngannou is fight some 7-foot tall heavyweight in PFL. Why the fuck would Francis Ngannou want to go back to MMA, get paid a fraction of what he made in a boxing match just to get knocked out again by some fucking like Middle Eastern heavyweight. Like, think about that for a second. Boxing, you have less injury than MMA because you're not wrestling, so that's not putting stress on your body, and you're getting paid way more. Why would he go back to PFL and fight in MMA? Francis Ngannou should never fight an MMA fight again unless it's against a boxer. That's the only reason he should ever get back into an MMA cage, unless he's doing like a promo and they need to do like a dramatic video shot of him wearing a suit standing in an octagon. He should never go back there. I don't even think he should do any boxing matches. The guy made $30 million in just 2 boxing matches, and he got knocked out cold after getting knocked down twice for his troubles. Like, that is enough money to retire. The only reason he should ever get back into a boxing ring is to box Tyson Fury. And the only reason he should ever get back into an MMA cage is to fight against like AJ or Deontay Wilder or some other heavyweight boxer that he can just wrestle. Fuck. Like, it's ridiculous to have him fight an up-and-coming heavyweight boxer. What's he going to do now? Fight other 0-1 boxers? This is so stupid. The guy's 37 years old. He made $30 million in his last 2 fights. Let him retire. So, like, Ariel Helwani is actually just off his rocker when it comes to Francis Ngannou. He has this personal vindication where, as Francis does well, he sees that as him getting one up on Dana White and all of the fans that ride Dana's nutsack and just kind of like shit on Ariel in his comments. So he has this personal investment, like he calls himself a journalist, which is laughable. But yeah, ultimately, like, that was a horrible knockout that Ngannou just took. Why would he ever fight in MMA or boxing again unless he's gonna get paid like another $20 million to fight Tyson Fury? And yeah, I don't want to get too much into this, but Ariel Helwani's just been horrible on Israel and the Gaza war from the beginning of it, ever since October 7th, and even before. Like, he is just a straight up moron when it comes to politics and world events. He's like Israel. He's just so bad, and he has like a child's brain. He talks about how he went to Israel one time and he saw a Palestinian cab driver there, and they talked and they were nice to him. So how can there be an issue because when he went to Israel, the Palestinian cab driver was nice to him? And then the only reason I'm bringing this up is because on his show today, or on his Monday show, he's like, I was in Saudi Arabia and I was a little worried because I was Jewish, but they didn't lynch me. I'm like, dude, you are so fucking dumb. Saudi Arabia has been normalizing relations with Israel for the last 5 years. They're an ally of the United States. They do massive trade agreements. Why would they lynch you because you're Jewish? Saudi Arabia doesn't give a shit about Palestinians. The only thing they do is give them lip service, but they're actually just have huge economic relations with Israel. Why would they attack you? He's just so stupid, and he is a straight-up Zionist, doesn't care at all about Palestinian lives that are being lost in Israel's genocide. And I just wanted to bring that up because I do think it's a really serious issue, and we have a prominent Jewish voice who is proud of his Jewishness, and he is so ill-informed that he is a loud Zionist voice and is tacitly endorsing genocide. So I do think that this is a very important issue to bring up. I want to give props to the Muslim fighters such as Mohammad Mokaev and Umar Nurmagomedov, who won not this past weekend, but the previous weekend, that called for an end to Israel's war against Gaza. But of course, no one's going to cover them because this sport is very American right-wing. So just wanted to bring that up because I do think it's important. And then to just end on a bit of a lighter note, although not much lighter because this card is dismal, I wanted to preview next week's card. So, I'm doing the main event challenge, and the reason I chose to do main events is because in theory, we'd have the most tape on all of the fighters that are fighting in the main event. So you'd have the best well-informed predictions for these fights, but UFC is not even trying. Like, I don't knock the Apex for its atmosphere or lack thereof, but I want some real fights for at least the main event. Like, I don't care about the undercard. You can stock that up with all of Dana White's Contender Series guys, but Marcin Tybura is coming off a loss. Tuivasa is coming off a loss. Hibis is coming off a loss. Namajunas is coming off a loss. At least Blanchfield and Ferro are coming off of wins. And Allen's coming off a win. But this is a brutal 1, 2, 3, 4 fight nights in a row. This is going to be brutal. And it's the main events aren't even good. There's like 3 out of 8 fighters coming off of wins fighting in the main event. And I'm sorry, guys. I try to not be too hard on these cards, but there's no one good fighting on this card. There's no one good. I mean, Thiago Moises is a semi-good lightweight. He's not great. He's semi-good. And Brian Battle's kind of good, but he's really not good. He's really not that good either. And then these are just 2 middling heavyweights. Like, I love both of them, but let's just be honest. They're not good, and this card is not good. So it's going to be painful for me to find the motivation to break this down. I think I'm just going to say Tai Tuivasa because he punches harder. At least Hibis versus Namajunas has like some interest stylistically to see who's going to win that fight, but this next card is brutal. Wow. Anyway, I will be back to break it down. Don't expect much because I'm not motivated to break down Tuivasa versus Tybura. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know if you like the idea of this midweek kind of recap of everything. Let me know if you want me to cover any other topics or what other videos I should make. I'm thinking about making one on Colby Covington, kind of just showing how much of a loser he is. And let me know if you want me to make a video just highlighting Ariel's hypocrisy on Gaza, because that's also something that I've been thinking about making. So, don't want to end it on too poor of a note, but literally millions of people being starved to death by a genocidal colonial government in Israel. And you have Ariel Helwani just supporting that. And it really just pisses me off, especially when he's like, I was so surprised I wasn't lynched when I went into Saudi Arabia last weekend. Oh, wow. Anyway, don't want to end it on too negative a note. So thank you all for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And everyone, have a great day.